Hello and welcome to Bearded Baking. Today we're going to make a 4-ingredient bread that takes about 15 hours or so, but is really easy to make and no knead. So come on, let's learn how to make it. Alright, first we're going to start off with 3 cups of flour. Any all-purpose flour will do. I prefer to do with most of my flours is go ahead and run them through a sifter. That helps get out any clumps and everything early on. Make sure everything's nice and perfect. There's 2 and here's 3. Next we need 1½ teaspoons of salt. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And go ahead and sift those right into your mixing bowl. And I have one of those old-fashioned sifters with the hand turn on it. Garage sale finds are the best things in the world. Even though we sifted it, go ahead and give it a light stir with your spoon just to make sure that the salt got mixed in really well with the flour. Part 1 is done. Next we're going to need 1.5 cups of room temperature water. Now some people, because this is what we're going to use to help kind of get the yeast going a little bit, some people prefer to use warmer water, but you know what, with what we're doing, just plain old room temperature water is going to be fine. So there's 1 cup, a little bit more, to half. And on this recipe I found out that a little bit more than 1.5 cups is okay. To that we are going to add 1/2 teaspoon of active dry yeast. And this is that jar that's been sitting in your mom or grandma's freezer for God knows how long that you didn't know what to do with. Now you do. I'll go ahead and give that active yeast just a little bit of stir since it has been in the freezer to kind of get it to warm up a bit. And we'll let that set for just a minute or so before adding it to our flour mixture. Alright, it's been about a minute. We can see that there's kind of like how the yeast has kind of gotten a little bit bigger, and we're just going to go ahead and add that directly, all that water and yeast. See, there's still some in the bottom. I'm just going to add a little bit more tap water to it to get it rinsed out. So we want all of the yeast to go directly in there. Now the magic trick to get this properly mixed is not your hands for once. Use a good rubber scraper. The reason why, this becomes very sticky very quick. You'll see in just a second. All those flour molecules like to stick to the water and the yeast and the salts in it, and everything's starting to get active. So just get a good rubber scraper, scrape down the side, make sure that everything gets mixed together. You don't want it too dry. This isn't a dry mixture. Again, this is a nice moist mixture. Now see how it's kind of looking almost like what I would call biscuit dough. And I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more water to it that I've got sitting out. Like I said, I want it to be just a little bit more wet than it is. Just a couple of splashes of water to it. That way everything is nice and mixed together real well. Hear that gooiness? That moist gooiness, that's what you want to hear. That means everything is almost in a ball. It means everything's working, everything's getting active. And there you have it. Now that is going to sit there for 15 hours. And I know that sounds like a long time, but the nice thing is I tend to make this late in the afternoon, late in the evening. So the next morning I know that I've got something that I can easily put in the oven and make. So make sure to cover that with some saran wrap or plastic wrap or whatever you wish to call it. And it's going to sit outside of the refrigerator. It's going to sit on your counter for a good 15 hours. And this will get bigger. It should about double in size. We're going to go ahead and leave that, put that on the counter. And I'm going to move on to, ta-da! The magic of the world is prep ahead of time. So I've already got some that I've got prepped. And we're going to move on to the next step. The next step that's really important is to go ahead and turn your oven on to 450 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and get that started. And what you're going to need to do is go ahead and put your Dutch oven or large covered container that you're okay to throw in your oven and throw some bread in. Make sure you go ahead and put that in the oven while it's heating up. I've tried making it where you put the Dutch oven in as you're warming it up. I've tried it where you wait till the oven's heated, then put the Dutch oven in. But I found that the bread comes out the same. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the kitchen timer for a good half hour as well. Because what you want to do is get that Dutch oven nice and hot and ready to go. Notice there's no oil in there yet, or there won't be any oil in there. So there's not going to be any oil in there, and this is just going to get nice and hot while we go ahead and prep the rest of the bread mixture that I prepared earlier. So let's move to that. So our next step is we are going to take our already prepped dough and we're going to get it ready for to bake. So what you're going to need to do is get a nice clean surface and you're going to put some flour on it. Yay! Now do not be afraid of the flour because this is what's going to help cover and coat the outside of our bread. Otherwise, it is going to be impossible to handle. Again, we got some good doughy bread, some gooey bread. I'm going to go ahead and use a rubber scraper on it. Because what we're going to try to do is roll this, woo, get that nice stretch to it. Good. This into a nice ball. So it'll make this great bread. There we go. We got most of our gooey bread mixture out. Go ahead and set that to the side. And go ahead and give it a little bit more flour on the top. This recipe, as my friend put it, lots of flour. Lots of flour on the outside. Helps give it a nice coating. Makes a good crunchy outer layer of bread. So now we're just going to give it a little roll. Again, we're not trying to knead this. We're just trying to get it lightly covered in all that flour on the outside into a nice ball of bread. And there we go. That lovely ball of bread is going to be ready to go in the oven. So we let it sit here while the Dutch oven is in the oven getting warm. We'll be right back. Take our hot Dutch oven out, take the lid off. Always make sure to get good oven mitts. When handling a hot Dutch oven that's at 450 degrees, make sure to take the lid off. Get a little bit of flour dusting on our hands so we can pick up this bread. Woo. Put the hot loaf right into our Dutch oven. Return the lid. I'm going to place it back in the oven for 30 minutes with the lid on, and then we'll take the lid off for the last 15 minutes to make it a good crunchy brown crust. Alright, so after the first 30 minutes, we're going to go ahead and take our lid off and set our timer for another 15 minutes so that can get nice and brown. Ooh, there we go. And turn the oven off because it's no longer needed. All right. Ooh. Ooh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that beautiful piece of bread. drop it onto a cooling rack. You can let it sit there for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then I'll show you what that bread's really good for. All right, now comes to the fun part. What you hear? Hear how crunchy it is already? We're going to go ahead. Ooh, still a little warm. Ooh, hot, steamy, fresh bread. I'm going to take some fresh butter or margarine, whichever you've got. Oh, see the steam coming out of that bread. I'm going to go ahead and slather it with some love. There you have it. Some wonderful homemade bread. 4 ingredients, no kneading. All in all, about 16 hours in total. And you get some yummy homemade bread. You're not going to get this in a store. You can always add something extra to it, maybe some garlic powder or some chili powder. Make it unique, spice it up. This is also great re-toasted in your toaster. Make it nice and crunchy, great with spaghetti, lasagna, or just bread and butter. I'll see you next time. Until then, make some fun stuff at home. Mm-hmm.